Vivan, so the idea for this, now feedback, is really for us to give you some information of what happened. And of course we will give you also written feedback later on, but this is more of a way that we can discuss. So it's not monodirectional. So it's not like I'm only telling you, but I'll ask you, you will ask me back what you don't understand, what you agree, what you disagree, and so on, so we can have we know where you can go in the future. Is that okay? Is that clear?
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, my main thing, and Davide will also say, so Davide, you can also pop in whenever you want us, is well done. It felt a very well structured kind of thought, and it's the first time where you have attacked difficult issues with a great honesty and a great level of realism, what you can work on and what you can't work on, because the other times I felt like, wow, she's dealing with something that she can't really tame. So well done for that. I'll just do a little bit of a description what you've done in the very beginning. You sort of explained to us where you started, and then some of the texts that have been influential for you, and and then you came down to a certain symptomatology. My very first question for you, Vivan, is you gave us a table. So a little bit of feedback is, first of all, if you can name what the table is all about, that would make it very easy for us. There was no title on the table, but also there was no titles on each column of each table. So I couldn't understand what the middle column is and what the end column really means. So that would make it much more clear for us. But before I get there, you sort of have these three definitions of boredom, and I don't remember all of them, but especially at the second one, you, by Peter Tuhi or something like that was the name, you did not make red all parts of the definition, so you deliberately ignored or didn't include parts of indifference, depression, surfeit, and so many others. Why did you do that? What made you choose specific things, and why you didn't choose others?
Because the objective of using this definition is in order for me to analyze, to summarize the experience and the result that I've got from the experiment. So because the other depression, surfeit, those mind state did not actually appear in my experiment, did not appear in my experience. So I just pick up the words or the mind state that actually already exists.
So then in your real boredom, which was your fourth category, did you feel those feelings of depression, surfeit, indifference? And
no.
So then it wasn't real boredom then, or what?
But I pick up all this mind state is in order to discover, is in order to assume that this is boredom, because it didn't, in the definition, it didn't say you have to be all these symptoms, but you need to cover one or two, rather than you have to be all of them.
Okay, so it would be very clear if you could make that specific, because otherwise, because how it reads to me, and I don't know if it was the same for you, Davide, it's like, these are the symptoms, and this is what I had. And it almost feels like some symptoms you didn't even include in your consideration. It feels like I'm not even going to consider about the depression. Whereas now you say, actually, I just didn't tick depression because depression is not necessary to have it. Yeah, it's a little bit. It's almost like I don't know. Do you see the same thing, Davide?
Yeah.
Do you have any other way of saying it? Because
No, I think it's actually good. It would be really helpful to follow what you just said. I mean, it's like it would make it really clearer for us, because otherwise it could look like. I mean, it makes you ask, why did she ignore those other ones? And there may be good reasons, as you're just saying, but we don't know them. So if you actually, would have expressed those, I think you would have helped us.
Okay.
Because what I'm hearing from you is that you first did the experiments and then you saw the symptoms, when actually this theory of symptoms exists before your experiments even started. These guys wrote these symptoms in the 90s, in the 80s, I don't know when they wrote them, but in a sense they pre-exist. Yeah. So then you take this list and you put a tick in front of those experiments. Whereas here you're saying the opposite. I did the experiments and I'm keeping things the way I like. No. Actually, you've really done it the same way, but you just don't claim it this way. So I think it's the way you claim the information. So that was a very important aspect. Then a little bit about the presentation itself. I would say if you could have the videos embedded in the actual PowerPoint or keynote you had, would make things much clearer.
Yeah.
Because the fiddling between windows and then you didn't, there was this bar that was getting my interaction, and your videos are very much like I need to pay attention to it, what's going on, and whatever is distracting my attention won't let me be bored or will make me be bored, but you need to know what you want with those videos.
Because to be honest, this is the first time I use the apps, the keynote, so I still I can't figure out how to put those videos into the
Oh, you
PowerPoint.
just drag it and you put it on Keynote. It's that simple.
Because I don't know about
I
that.
can show you another time. But it will help very much. Yeah. Can you, I think also you bring some information down, such as the Warhol film, but you don't say anything about it. So your audience might be, we don't even know which film it is from Warhol. So is it the Morrissey films, like Trash, or is it the Empire film? Or is it the Blowjob film? Like I have no clue which film it is and what this film is all about. I just know that you had to watch it. Actually, if you watch Frankenstein, for example, it's quite a funny, easy film to watch and you never get bored with it. But this is not the film you watched, I imagine. So a little bit of contextualization would be needed there. Then the videos you made yourself, do you consider them being artworks on their own as they stand or not?
I don't think it is, because it is very raw and it is not in a very nice angle. Because I did it by myself, I just want to capture what I want the audience to see, rather than thinking okay, I need to shoot it in a very artistic way. So I didn't assume that it is actually.
Here you have two paths to go. One is to say, because you use the word nice, and that's a little bit problematic for me. Why should a nice video be boring? Yeah, once you try to make a video have a good camera angle and an interesting light and a beautiful color and a good clothing, then it fails to be boring.
Oh, you are saying to make the video become a product of boring?
I'm not saying, I'm asking you. Yeah. And then the other way to go and sort of look at other artists who have filmed boring tasks and understand what does the camera angle do, what does the lighting, how do they use lighting, how do they use editing, do they use any editing, do they really care where to put the camera and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. So discovering that kind of technique of boring videos would be a good idea. Personally, I felt that these videos were very beautiful. I didn't see anything not nice about them. And for me, they were artistic products on their own, and I wanted to watch more of them for a longer time. So I felt you gave us very little time about them, but I understand, of course, you had to present other elements. Yeah, I just think they're quite interesting. I mean, one was the clock, the other was, what else did you show us?
Watching the Warhol film.
Did you say the tent?
The tent.
The tent, I mean, it would be very interesting to watch that. And you also had another film you showed us, not in this presentation, but another, The holding
The
your
holding,
weight,
yeah.
which I saw you were about to put, but you never put it on. I don't know why. Hmm?
I miss it.
You forgot it. It's okay. And you had another one also.
Sitting?
The chocolate.
Oh.
You didn't show us that film either. Of course, you have to make choices, and I'm not saying, but there is something about those videos that speak on or their own in many ways. So sometimes you can let videos speak. It felt like you were rushing things to come out when we didn't have time. So when I first watched the chocolate video, the Kit Kat video, I could pick up more information, and then you spoke about it, and I got it.
Oh.
So where do you put the video in a presentation is interesting. Do you put it before the paragraph, after the paragraph, during the paragraph? And what you did is during the paragraph. I'm not sure whether that was the most successful format for this presentation. Why? Because these videos need to bore us, or we need to see your boredom at least. And we never had the time because you were speaking on top of it. So we could never devour the moment.
Yeah, because I'm very aware of the time, so I kind of tend to rush through the presentation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other way is not to have at all a keynote and to just have the videos one after the other. And you keep on talking on top of it. Then we might ignore you and watch the videos. I don't know if it will work, but it is something you could try in the future. One last thing, or two things I have for you. Then you speak about the experiment you did with Davide, but you didn't explain to us what was the whole situation. In a sense, you told us what happened, but what was the whole situation there you missed. And the whole situation there, what you need to contextualize is, I asked Davide to watch a film together, and that film should be boring. But Davide, rather than doing that, he decided he's going to take half an hour finding a film so that I'm bored. So I didn't expect it, because the way it sounded was almost like you asked Davide to find a way to bore you, and he found a way to bore you. But it is not exactly that. It's a little bit like that, but it is not. So you need to make that really clear for us. I don't think you were clear there. I think I was a bit... if I didn't know the experiment, I would have been lost, personally.
Yeah, it was a little bit unclear. But,
I was rushing through that section.
But it is also a complicated one, because it actually happened both things. It happened that she asked me to do that, then after I also did what you just said, to decide something else.
Yeah, but she didn't know how you would bore her, so in a sense, she didn't expect it would be also that action that would bore her.
Yeah.
So it's that thing would pronounce your work rather than take your work down. It's those little things that we shouldn't, as you say, I was rushing and I was stressing. It's those little things where we can put, we need to understand where the emphasis needs to go. And that's exactly the moment where the emphasis needs to go. Because this is what will differentiate this boredom to the other boredom. Whereas maybe on Kenneth Goldsmith, you don't need to spend that much time, or that much emphasis, or that much, tone of voice, because it's not the most important thing in your presentation. I felt that was really good though, when you were showing videos, and some of them, and you had to speak on top of it, your tone of voice changed. That's really successful, because you allowed us to say, okay guys, forget the video, I'm here now. So that was helpful. And sometimes you also need to consider silence. Silence in presentations is super important. So once you say the most important sentence, give us 3 or 4 or 5 seconds to get it. That will make us understand, wow, a paragraph has finished. It means something is closing and something new is starting. As a result, I need to make sense of what has just been said. You give importance. So think of your vagueness. And that is not so much a presentation skill, but it is more for you to understand what is important. So sometimes I'm wondering if you have understood yourself what is important in your research and what is not. Yeah, so I'm having give gravity to your conclusion because your conclusion was about the intentional and your unintentional, and you didn't give it gravity. In the end of the day, this is what you worked the last month. Enjoy it. Give it the space it needs in order to breathe. Then you gave us this text about the desire, about Nora and the cup of tea. You never told us whose this text is from. Where did you find this text?
In the psychologist's website, it didn't say who's the one who created.
But you have an author of a book.
No, I can't find the author.
Okay, just say it comes from this website. It's important. And if it is not a very important, I mean, in the end of the day, I really felt that you could have said that yourself. It's not like a massive truth or a specific scientific knowledge or something. It's just a silly thing. So you could have used that example in your own words, in your own style, and it could have worked as well. But when you say somebody said, my first question is like, who's that somebody? And I've said it many times. It's not so important what people say, but who says is more important. Because then we understand their intentions or motivations. And then you finished, of course, with this is not an artistic project. And I had to ask you, why do you consider it not being an artistic project? Actually, it is an artistic project. It can only be an artistic project because you never approached it from a different perspective, but it is not an artistic project yet. That's a different thing, yeah? And I think you made it very clear in the question and answer. And I think so it was needed for you to clarify that.
Yeah.
But be very precise. One other thing. You remember in our feedback I told you, be very precise when you use the word interesting, boring, bored, and interested. And you were this time.
Yeah.
So you were not saying, oh, I did this and this video was more interesting, therefore I kept it. It's like, well, interesting is a bad word for you. So we were very precise with that, so well done for that. That's my feedback, David. I don't know if you have any...
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like my feedback, I'm with you, I agree with what you said. I would like to just share with you that I felt that for the first time, you know, I could really follow you and be with you during a moment in which you were trying to express your own research. So I'm just really happy about it.
Yeah. You were a master of the research, for sure. You were a master of the problems of the research, and you were sober about it. All this time I felt you wanted to kill Leviathan, and I don't know if you know who Leviathan is, but he's a very important creature in philosophy, monstrous creature, and that you wanted to kill it. You were not able to kill it, and you were very sober about it. You were like saying, this is what it is, I know exactly what I'm doing, I can't do more and I can't do less. And I accept the things, I have scouted, it felt like very much like she had scouted the whole land. So, good.
And with awareness, so that's the thing that made me, for the first time I could see, that was the awareness of the fact that there were certain things you could not, you know, address or find solutions for, and just saying, I'm aware of these. And for me, as a, you know, someone that is listening to you, it is something that it makes me come with you, you know what I mean? Otherwise I would think, okay, but are you aware of this problem or of this problem? You know?
Yeah, because I also try to digest what the feedback before this that I get from both of you, and also try to put it in the presentation as how I can aware of the problem might have. So I try to utilize the feedback from.
Yeah. One last thing I have for you. So if the most important, this is what I'm getting is the most important part of your work so far, is the difference between the intentional boredom and the unintentional boredom. And it also, of course, stems from your reading of Kenneth Goldsmith. So it's the first time that you're reading Kenneth Goldsmith in this context, because all up until now you never read him in terms of intention. But it's the first time I'm hearing you speaking about him in these terms. So if your research output or your research, how can I say, product is the difference between intentional and unintentional, maybe then your artworks need to depict that. Yeah. So maybe now you have to go, because this is what you have discovered at the end of the day. You haven't discovered other things. So maybe you should make videos where you have intentional or performances or photos or I don't know what, or documentations of such events of intentional and documentations of unintentional, or alternatively make a guideline of but I guess this is where you have to work. You now have to work with intentional and unintentional boredoms, and to either show them or challenge them or have us experience them, or somehow work on these two concepts or this one concept. Yeah. That correlation between intentional and unintentional. So all your artwork should revolve around that.
Yeah, actually I started to have this question of how can I, from this result of intentional boredom and unintentional boredom, to build into another state of creating something from this result. This is my question I have after the research.
Yeah.
It gets me confused this somehow, because as you say, you consider the videos already some sort of artistic.
Yeah. They have some value,
right?
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes I get confused, because it's like, it looks to me that you go in a direction of, I don't know if I'm really understanding, so I'm just expressing, but you go looking for a certain kind of boredom, and then when you are in that state, then after you wanna see if actually you can create an artistic product from that place. But it seemed to me somehow that during the research, while trying to do that, you have already been doing some artistic products. So I wonder if, the practice could be actually, rather than trying to navigate and go through the different islands and reach the boredom land and then from there create, I wonder if you could actually start to consider the process of trying to reach that thing, and what you make to document or to, I don't know how to call it, that's your decision also, already the artistic process or product.
I think this could be a very good idea, but because in these 2 weeks I did not put my focus and awareness on this question, because I just aim to make myself discover.
This is the interesting thing. You might already have information, data that, as David said and as I was trying to tell you before, is already artistic. For me, watching you for an hour eating your Kit Kat is a really beautiful project. When you showed it to me, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. But the most interesting thing is that all those things that you recorded were intentional tasks, were intentional boredoms. And there is no documentation of any sort of your unintentional boredom. So imagine if I go to this exhibition where things are hanged and videos are portrayed, and it says this, and we see those different, and then there is only one part, one wall, where there are long texts of descriptions of events, but no image, no visual. This is how the difference between intentional and unintentional is given, by the fact of non-documentation and documentation. So if I intended to document my process, I've intended to document my process, so it's an intended boredom. If I've never intended and I happen to be bored, I can only speak about it in the end. Yeah?
This sounds very interesting.
So do not consider that the product to make a new, you could make new products, but boredom itself is a process, as you explained. Boredom is not so much, in many ways I disagree with the idea of a state of boredom. We are not in boredom, but we process towards boredom, or we keep on moving in boredom, yes? And in that kind of way, you have these processes. You didn't have to produce boredom. I don't know how to explain it to you. But there is something really beautiful with those tasks, because you show the intentionality. Anything else, David, so that we can close out with Vivan?
I think
It's a short feedback now, of course. We don't need. But
I think I don't know.
Vivan, do you have any questions for us?
No.
Is the feedback clear that you received?
Yeah, I think the feedback it also helps a lot for me to consider on the presentation how can I improve on that aspect. It helps a lot.
Great. Thank you very much, Vivan.
Thank you.
Gonna switch off.